for the kids, we have some stories for you guys. We have David and Goliath is the story that we're doing today. We're going to talk about David and Goliath. And this is an old story from the Bible, and there's lots of other stories that talk about this idea of, the little guy coming up against the big guy. And really what it comes down to is love and fear and what we decide to pay attention to. So there's another great story, a Buddhist story, about this little boy who finds within himself these two lions. And these two lions are fighting each other. And one of the lions is angry and resentful and jealous and, rageful. And the other lion is sweet and kind and gentle and giving and generous. And he's struggling with this argument that continues to go on within him. And he goes to his grandfather and he says, "Grandfather, who's going to win this fight that keeps going on?" And the grandfather says to him, "Well, the lion that will win is the one that you feed," right? So we want to see where we're paying attention to, what we're paying attention to. What we pay attention to increases. So every single breath, we're on the cusp of choosing between love and fear. And that's what makes up the difference in our life. If we choose love, we'll be moved into love. So that, and it's not just for ourselves, but so that we can be extensions of God's love. Like that prayer that Judy read, let me give that out so that I can embody it in such a degree that I know I have more than enough to give. So I love the story David and Goliath. I've told it before, but it's a really great story. And you guys can sit on the floor too if you want to. We used to have the kids sit all in the middle. So cute. Anyhow, there's many versions of the story David and Goliath, and it's a pretty old story. And if you're not familiar with the story, I'll tell it to you. A while ago, way, it's an old story, back before beepers. There were these two groups of people, the Philistines and the Israelites. And it started even before they were at war with each other. Actually, there was this king, King Saul. And King Saul wasn't a great king. And so they were like, we need a new king. And so this guy Samuel went to Bethlehem to go find a new king, which is kind of interesting because the other guy, gentle king, came from Bethlehem too. Maybe it was a place where you got a king. I don't know. The land of kings, the land of unlikely kings. So Saul goes to this Bethlehem, and he says, to this father, Jess, who had 8 sons, I need a king. So show me your sons. And he saw the sons, and all of the sons looked kind of king-worthy, and he thought, I'll go with the oldest one. He's the biggest. And he heard in his voice, don't judge by the shape of the man. Check out his heart. And so he looked at each of these men, and he was like, I don't know if they're ready. Do you have any more sons? He's like, I got this kid. He's like the youngest. His name's David. He's a shepherd. He's out in the field. He's not really king material. So David comes up, scrappy, and Samuel sees him, and he says, oh, this is the one. And then he anointed him, and he said, you have greatness within you. So I love that part of the story. We don't always hear that part of the story because that's what we could do for each other, to recognize the king that lives within each of us and then anoint each other and say, you have greatness within you. It may not look like that today, but it's within you, and I'm going to anoint you with that truth. And now that I've anointed you, that I've blessed you with my being able to see the great king within you, you're going to be more likely to show up to that agenda, as opposed to the agenda that we usually bless each other with, which is, you're not worthy, this ain't happening, and you kind of smell bad. I have to be the one to tell you because nobody else was going to tell you. So this is a new story. We can bring forth a new story. And that's an example of a new story. So cut to, David's in the field with these sheep. And he's like, and what he's doing when he's with these sheep is he's making music. I think that's kind of cool. He's like making music out in the field. He's a musician. He's a poet. In fact, it said, the book that I was reading, that some of the things that you'll read in Psalms were written by David when he was out with the sheep. And one day, they have this big war going on with the Philistines and the Israelites. And the Philistines are like these mighty, powerful warmongers. They're so well-versed in war. And they're huge. They're like intimidating, and they're threatening. They know how to captivate. They know how to intimidate. Like, they're really powerful. And the Israelites, not so much. So the king of the Israelites says to the shepherd boy, David, go out. They've been sitting there for 40 days and 40 nights with no action. Like, go out and tell me what's happening there. So David, and he's like, and while you're there, like, bring some food for your brothers, because there's 3 of them at war, right? And so he gathers up some food and he goes out to see what's happening. Now, but the thing, before we get there, the funny thing that happens is that these Israelites have been sitting in the stew of fear for 40 days and 40 nights, listening to how they're going to be crushed. The Philistines have sent down the biggest of the biggest, and he goes down, he walks down to this valley, and he looks up at the Israelites and he's like, I'm going to crush you. You guys are dead meat. You're dead. We're going to bring you down. We're going to make you our slaves. Send me your strongest man, and I'm going to kill him, and then you're going to be our slaves. Unless that guy kills me, but that's not going to happen, because I'm going to crush you. And the Israelites are tuning into this every single night like it's Fox News, They're like, oh my God, Goliath is so cruel. He's going to kill us. He's going to take us down. And when Goliath isn't telling them that he's going to take them down, the Israelites go back and they just talk about it amongst themselves. They're like, did you see Goliath last night? Yeah, he's going to kill us. He's going to kill us. Like, it's going to be the end. I don't know if this resonates with any modern day stories. But so, we have these 2 tigers. What are we feeding these tigers, right? So the Israelites are there, and they've been sitting there for so long that they can't even move. They're stuck in fear. They're immersed in this story, and they keep plugging into it. Now, we can say, like, oh my God, like, yeah, we're conscious enough not to turn on Fox News, not to be even politically swayed in either way, but Fox News is notorious for singing the bad news. That's what they do. It's the bad news channel. Like, they're going to tell you everything that's not working, and so you're going to start to feel a little bit uncomfortable if you keep watching that. So, but the thing is, Fox News isn't just happening out there. We got 24/7 channel going on inside our brains that are telling us, what things aren't working, how we're not measuring up, how this isn't going to happen. And this happens for us, I had this woman call me from California who I was working with her on a one-person show. We worked together, and she was getting some stories up, and she called me recently and she said, I said, how's that show going? She goes, it's just stagnant. It's just been sitting there, I haven't been working on it at all. I've been frozen about taking the next right step. And then this was the icing, she said to me, and now I'm too old. Like, the ego will just get you. And now I'm too old, okay? So this is the stories that play in our head, especially around unfulfilled dreams. We have these dreams and these desires, and we want to fulfill them, but we have all of this, Fox News, bad, ideas going on in our head where we keep playing these old tapes of, you're not good, it's not going to work, not this time, you're not capable. The Goliath of my fear is bigger than the expansion of my love in regards to this area. So applying this to your own life, thinking about those unfulfilled dreams that we've been holding off on till we have permission, till the time is right, till we have enough money, till my boss gives me the raise, till the kids are old enough, till the kids graduate, till I get the permission slip that I'm looking for. So these are all of the conditions that we put on just taking the next step. I just said to her, what would the next step be? That's all you have to do. You don't have to slay Goliath right now. Just take the next step, right? So I got to tell you that the name Goliath means to captivate. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was really interesting. So Goliath did his job. He captivated the Israelites. He held them captive in his story. We find Fox News or our own bad vibes just running, and we get on the treadmill with it, and we just go running down the street, and we're captured by it. It's so hard to jump off that treadmill. So captivate means to hold someone's attention. Your attention is the most valuable thing you can give anything. It heals people. It lifts people. Your attention is so powerful. So look at where you're paying attention. That's for all of us. Most of us now spend a lot of time paying attention to a screen, So just to notice, like, what's going on, where are we putting our eyes? Our attention is so very valuable. And if we give it away to an unworthy source, then we become captivated by an illusion. And the longer we wait on a human dream, the bigger the giant gets. You ever notice that? Sometimes before we face our own fears, we build them up to such a degree that it's no wonder we don't face them, right? For the Israelites, it was 40 days. For my friend, it was 10 years. And do you know what happens? You know how they got to 40 days and 40 nights? And you know how she got to 10 years of being stagnant? One breath at a time. That's what it was. It was one breath devoted to fear. And then one more breath devoted to not doing anything. And one more breath devoted to not doing anything. That was it. That was it. Every single thing, every single breath led up to this idea. But at any time, they could have chosen to jump off and take one more step in love as opposed to stagnation and no step at all. So, as we continue to walk and wake up in fear and accept the story of fear, fear holds our attention, and somewhere along the way, what happens is we forget we even have a choice. We just start to show up to the cog of this unfulfilled life, and we just continue to think that this is acceptable. It's not acceptable. And when we start to eat undigestible scripts of fear, we're not being soul-fed. Our soul starts to starve, and we start to get into problems, health-wise and otherwise. So it's important stuff. And then by the time the path becomes so well-worn, that path of fear, the path of conforming, the path of not taking action becomes so well-worn, and the excuse is so well-rehearsed that this limited idea becomes the truth and the devil we know. Well, this is just the way it is. We've totally accepted that this is just the way it is. And it's what we pay attention to. It's the tiger we feed. We stop paying attention to the possibilities of our dream, and we wake and we stir this dull pot of acceptable and undigestible fear. So the Israelites were not paying attention to love or God or their heart. The Israelites were paying attention to Goliath and giving all of their attention to Goliath. And they were a very faithful audience. And as long as we pay attention to our fear, there's no way that we can hear that other voice. Because fear and love don't stand in the same shoes. So if we're really asleep to that fear, we have to do things, take little even baby steps to cause a shift in our actions so that we can start to even walk towards a new story. So the funny thing about our fears is that they're more intimidating in our minds than they are in real life. It's like the rearview mirror, things appear closer. We have made them in such big Goliaths, and they're actually so digestible if we just move toward it one step at a time. And the more we think about it, and the more we talk about our fears and our, unfulfilled dreams, the less action we're going to take. And then we experience being stagnant, being stifled, being stilled, being sedated by this truth. That's not really truth at all. And we become non-participants in our own dream. And that's when we become like the Israelites. Like they just did nothing. So there's, not to make you feel bad, but maybe to inspire you to say, okay, in this place where I'm doing nothing and I just keep thinking about this desire, what's the one small step that I can take to move in the direction? And you have a group of people around here who are invested in your moving in the optimal direction. So Goliath, the funny thing about these fears is that if we keep them in our head and we don't talk about them, or these dreams and we don't talk about them, they become bigger. And the funny thing about the Goliath story is that in the very early versions of the Goliath story, he was 6 feet 9 inches tall. And then as the story got older and older and older, the giant got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the later versions, he's 9 feet 9 inches tall. He didn't grow. We just made him bigger. We made it, we just put the nail in the coffin. Now I'm too old, or now I'm too broke, or now it's really not going to happen. So this thing just gets bigger and bigger. And the longer we wait, the bigger the problem gets. And the longer we wait to have that conversation, or just, book the theater, or just sit down and write the first chapter, or just ask the girl out, the longer we put that off, the longer we've invested in the alternative story, and the less gas we're going to have in the tank to actually do that thing that we want to do. Because we spent so much of our energy holding up the alternative story. So if it feels like too big, it's just in your head. We've made that up. It's an overblown Goliath. So, and then we get into mass consciousness with that. For an illusion to hold footing against a truth, it needs a lot of unconscious mass consciousness. So what does that mean? That means, for us to accept that a certain disease is insurmountable, a lot of people have to agree with that without actually checking with any source. And it happens like, David will come up to you and Joe will come up to you and say, I got a little bump on my arm. And because we love to look at the problem and romance the problem, we play the telephone game. And the next thing we know, we say to somebody, David has a huge lump on his arm. And then that person will go to someone, did you hear David? His whole arm is a lump. And then they'll go to the next person. Did you hear about David? His arm's going to come off. They're going to cut his arm off. Did you hear about David? He's dead. David's dead. Yeah, because we love to romance that story, It makes us feel like something's happening, as opposed to, this lump is just a signal that I haven't taken my hand and written my first chapter because I'm so scared of that. Oh, you're so scared of that. Oh, yeah, I'm so scared too of singing my first song or whatever that is. And then we're having a real conversation, not talking about the illusions of lumps and bumps that we all want to romance and build altars to. So we had this standoff on the hill with Goliath and with the Israelites. And, he says, come on down here, send me your big man, and I'm going to take him down. And nobody moves. But David shows up. And the funny thing about David is the word David, the name David means beloved. So from the Israelites, they've been thinking about the audaciousness of Goliath, and Goliath himself has told them that they're going to be crushed by him. So at this point in the story, they need a miracle. They need to break the spell of the illusion. They need to stop paying attention to the giant fearmonger, and they need to, this giant fearmonger has been like really sucking them in like a moth to a flame. And what happens with moths and flames, So they need to return to their innocence and beginner mind, and move from fear to love. And right at that point in the story, David shows up, and his name means beloved. He's a symbolic example of how love can help us surmount this. And David sees the giant, and he's like, no, he didn't, He's like, what is he saying about my brothers? He's going to crush them? David, remember, he's like this little guy. And he's like, I'm going to take on the giant. And his brothers are like, you're insane. But he hasn't been sitting in the stew of fear for 40 days and 40 nights. He comes with a beginner mind. He's like, I got this, right? And they're like, you're crazy. So that moment right there is when we go out and we see that person doing that thing that is just in our bones and our DNA. And we're like, I got to do that, I remember when I was a kid, first time I went to the theater, I was like in second grade, and we went as a school to see a ballet. And I was like, oh my God, I thought it was like I was transformed. I felt like I went to church. Like I was transformed. And I remember I walked to the bus with this boy, and he was like, that was the dumbest thing. And I was like, how could you say that? Like, I was like, that's going to be me. I'm going to do that. I didn't say that to him because I didn't even know, that within me. I didn't know how to put words to it. But when you meet that moment where someone's doing the thing that you are designed to do, your knees will shake. You'll want to throw up. You might get angry. You might feel like you're going to cry. You had that experience, right? It will be visceral. The universe will tell you, this is for you. It will slap you sideways so that you know for sure that there's something happening in that moment that's beyond human understanding. And you've met that moment. So this is what happens. David sees the giant. He's like, that's for me. This is my fight. I think it's so funny. So you have this little David, this little kid, and he doesn't know about the giant. He's just there to bring his brother some food. He's not a man trained in war. He's a shepherd boy, but he believes he can take on the giant. And once he sees the giant hurling these curses, he gets fired up, and he represents that beginner mind. And at first, so he runs off to the king. Now, the king in this story represents the mind. So the fire in the belly is activated by that desire. That desire moves up to the heart. The heart goes, I want that. It moves up to the throat chakra. It speaks that. I'm going to do that. And then it gets to the mind, the king, and immediately the logic says, no. That's what the logic says. Because the logic is responsible for protecting the heart. And the logic says, look, if you go out there, you're going to be slaughtered. You will be broken. So the king says to David, no, you're not going. You will be broken, and I can't risk seeing you get broken. That's what the mind says to our heart. So God bless it, the mind is doing its job. But what the mind doesn't understand is that the heart's designed to be broken. And when it's broken, it actually expands into a greater heart. It expands into a lion heart. That's what we're developing on our way to our resurrection. We're developing this lion heart that's designed to be broken, that needs to be broken, so that we can experience ourselves as even greater than what we thought we were capable of. The thing that we threatened to kill us is the thing that is actually there to expand us into a greater idea of ourselves. As an example, there was this woman in California. This is it's an interesting example, but I'm going to share it anyhow. She had 2 twins, and one of them passed away. And all of the women in our group said, how can you live past that? You know, how can you have to celebrate that birthday every year? And how can you I would die if that were to happen to me. And so I used to walk with her on Fryman Canyon. And one day I said to her, I said, what's that about? Like, you have to live through that. Like, the thing that we think we could never live through. And she said, well, I didn't live through it. I died on the other side of that story, and a new me came to be. And she has a happy ending, you know? She took all of her energy towards the passion of her daughter, and she was an atheist, but she was a scientist, and she understood the stars, and she understood that we were made of stardust, and she understood the connection that she had with her daughter. And she brought this scientific program to the school, and she created something out of her passion. Like, she didn't let that kill her and make her smaller. So her heart got bigger. You know, she expanded into this thing that she didn't even know she was capable of. Before that story, she was like a mom with 2 kids, and she was kind of shy. So I thought that was interesting. That's the story. The calling of the heart never makes sense. Just know that. The mind's always going to say no, and the calling of because it doesn't make sense, and the calling of the heart never makes sense. But the thing that happens is that when we move towards that thing that we love and desire, we say, I'm going to do that, and we have it boil up, and then all of a sudden we get no. What happens to most of us is we say, I tried, and I got the no. So that's it. Because you saw I did try, right? So the heart has to knock 150 times or more in order to move past that. When Kathy's song was saying, every time I see you, you blow my mind. It's so funny, right? Like, every time I see that thing, it blows my mind. It needs to blow past my mind and break open a bigger possibility for me. And I'm going to let my love do that, not my logic of my fear. So our fire, our passion is strong enough if we activate it to do this battle for us. So, but what happens after that is that David goes back to the king, and let me just read this. It says, so he goes back to the king, and the heart keeps knocking. And the heart continues to beg, and David continues to beg the king, and he says, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. So finally, we wear it down. You know, you've been worn down by your kids, like, are we there yet? Can I do this? Can I get this? And finally, after 100 times, we're like, yes, just fine, just get it. And that's how the king was. Like, you know, he was like, fine, do it, you know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you go down and try and kill the giant, but I'm going to put conditions on you. So that's the next step. Right? We say, okay, you're going to get another try on this, but I'm going to get conditions. So say if you want to sing a song, before you sing a song, you have to go get a master's degree in singing. You have to make about 8 CDs, but never show them to anyone. And then maybe I'm going to let you sing at a close relative's birthday party that's not well attended. But before you actually sing a tune, you have to explain for about 20 minutes how bad you are and how you're not actually a singer. Right? Those are just some subtle conditions that we put on ourselves of not moving forward. And the king said to David, I'm going to put some conditions on you. You're going to hold the shield, and you're going to take this sword, and you can go down and kill the giant if you take those things. So little David, picked up this heavy shield and the sword, and his strength collapsed underneath it. He was too little to hold up these conditions. And these conditions were weighing too heavy on his heart. And so he tried to move across the room, and he couldn't do it. So he dropped the conditions, and he said to the king, no, I'm enough as is. Can you imagine saying that? Can you practice that for me? I am enough as is. Just close your eyes and just say it to yourself. I am enough as is. Yeah, take that one home with you. Whenever you meet up with that condition that wants to shut you down, say, wait, God brings me to it and God brings me through it, and I'm actually enough as is. Those conditions aren't going to help me. They're going to stifle the brilliance within me. And I might fail, I might fall, I might falter on my way to my brilliance, but I'm not going to let that stop me, because that's just going to erode the smallness of my heart so that a bigger heart can grow from that. So I'm enough as is. I just love that part of the story, because I've put so many conditions, and we've put so many conditions on ourselves. For me, this part of the story is about that conditional thing. And it's the defenses. It's our sweet little defenses that want to keep us safe. But what goodness comes from safety, really? Too much safety can smother the best of dreams. And if our fire and passion is strong enough, it will win that battle too. So the king gives David permission to run down the hill to kill the giant. And he comes with no. Oh, I'm sorry, that's me. Yeah. So he comes with no sword and no conditions. I'm like, who's that rude person? Can you not hear your phones ringing? So he comes, with nothing. He comes, and in the story, the giant has his own weak spots. The giant's resting on old expectations. The giant, Goliath, has the sword, has the shield, has the javelin, has all of these things, and he's weighted down because he's expecting a close contact battle, which was the style of the time. He didn't expect a little whippersnapper to come down the hill and hit him from a mile away with a rock in the head. He did not see that. So he was living in the old story, and it was his inability to move past his own possibilities that was actually his weakness. So David comes down, and the giant says, "Come here," and he's like, "I'm near enough." This is how he took down the lion. This is how when he went to the king and he begged him, "Please let me go," he said to the king, "I have taken down lions, I have taken down tigers that have tried to steal my sheep, and I've taken them down with my slingshot." So that's how he convinced the king that he could go, and that's how he took down the giant too. It wasn't that he wasn't prepared for this. So you are prepared to meet your giants. You might not think that you're prepared, and you might not even know. You might think, well, I don't know how to fight with a sword, and I don't know how to carry a shield. Don't worry, you don't need that. In this version of the story, you're going to have those secret pellets in your pocket that are going to be the words that you need to say to open the door. But right now you're going to say, well, they look like rocks. Yeah, I know. It's not going to make any sense. But you have to develop that faith. So David's a great example of developing that faith. He paid attention to his heart. He didn't allow the appearance of things to blind him to the infinite possibility. He activated the divine resource, and he faced his fears, and he slew them. And this is possible for you and me too. So the final thing, that the ego has in its pouch, that fear has in its pouch, is that thing that my friend threw at me from Los Angeles. I'm too old. So I wanted to read to you a few people that were not too old. At 70, Cornelius Vanderbilt began building railroads. At 70. At 75, cancer survivor Barbara Hillard became one of the oldest people and the first black woman to reach the North Pole. At 75. At 77, John Glenn became the oldest person to go into space. He went to the freaking moon at 77 years old, okay? At 86, Catherine Pelton swam the 200-meter butterfly at 86 years old. Okay, I can't even do that at this age. At 86 years old, he swam the 200-meter butterfly in 3 minutes, beating the men's world record for that age group by 20 seconds. Imagine if she didn't do that. If she didn't jump in the pool for us women, we'd be like, guys are always faster swimmers. Not today. Still a butterfly joke. At 87, Mary Baker Eddy founded the Christian Science Monitor at 87 years old. Do you know these stories of older people who have done great things through their life? God, you're only like 3 chapters into your life, most of us. We have so many more chapters left. And if not now, like when? So don't let that be the thing that holds you back. I wanted to open it up for the conversation, and I had a couple questions for you in regards to the conversation. But before we did that, I also wanted to let you know that April is going to be the month of also cultivating a conversation of conscious giving. And before doing that, I wanted to teach you a tool of tithing. For many people, tithing is like a Goliath. It's like, no way. There's no way I could give 10% of what I make to where I'm spiritually fed. So that's the idea of tithing, that you take 10% of everything that you make and you give it to where you're spiritually fed. This could be your church. This could be where you go and hang out with your dogs in a park. This could be to a spiritual person who feeds your soul. But the reason that this works is because it requires us to pay attention to our finances. Most of the time we just hide it in the back and we just kind of juggle it in a really mismanaged way. This tool, and we're going to try it out for a month, to the degree that you're comfortable, you're going to go in and have an internal conversation with your divine and say, what does that mean to me? You might even want to Google, what is tithing as a practice? What does that look like? What does that sound like? Is it for me? And if it is for me, what does it look like? But this is a spiritual tool and a spiritual practice, and each week we're going to give you a little spiritual tool to activate, the idea of prosperity and how you can use that in your life. Are there any questions on that? So now we're going to open up the conversation to the story about David and Goliath. And here are a few questions that I want you to contemplate as you think about what you want to share. For your fears, like, where do you need to put on your big girl pants and just step forward? Who can you engage in your higher story? Who might be a few midwives in your life who are, supporting you in knowing that that's the truth for you? Maybe even stop for a minute, and where can you take, like David, like a higher vantage point or a different vantage point? Where can you shake the old story? And where are you really willing to say, you know what, if this is a desire, the word desire means of the Father. If it fell into your brain and into your heart and into your bones, then it has everything it needs to be fulfilled. It's of the Father, and the Father doesn't leave you without the skills and tools to make that happen. So where can you really build a greater trust and faith to, what are the tools you're going to use? I'm interested in knowing what are the tools you're going to use to begin to take this conversation and embody it, okay?